Hey everybody, this is Callie D with the Smitten Kitten. And what do you want to go by? Do you want me to give your name or do you want to go by Snuggle Gummy Bear?
You can call me Snuggle Gummy Bear or just Kim.
Okay. So this is my good friend Kim. On Instagram, she's at Snuggle Gummy Bear. She's a really amazing lady. We've been friends for what, like a couple of years now? Has that been two
Yeah,
years?
3.
Snap. That's crazy.
I
3 years,
know.
huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It went.
Okay. But yeah, we met and I feel like a lot of my good friends these days we meet under pretty interesting circumstances. Isn't that how it goes though? So I put out a call on the Deep Ellum community page because we were going to be doing a kind of a live talk show basically, and with all women. And Kim responded, and I think your response was like, because I directed her to go to this warehouse where the studio was at, and she was like, I'm not gonna get murdered, am I?"
I
Uh,
did think that I had just done one of those like basic white girl in a horror movie things because I showed up and it's just a warehouse in an industrial park. I'm like, oh great, I'm that girl. I'm getting killed right now.
As long as you just don't run upstairs or like go inside a house where you can't get out, I think you'll be okay. Or fall, continuously fall.
That would be more me. Yeah, definitely be more me.
All right. So just kind of give us a little background history on you. I know that we share a lot of the same kind of background as far as having a very dysfunctional family, and that's putting it nicely.
Hmm.
So share as much as you want. Yeah,
Just starting from ground zero.
yeah. Just give us a little bit of your background. Maybe where you grew up, what kind of family dynamic you had. If you want to share any kind of past trauma, that kind of stuff.
I have a couple of those, so
Yeah.
we might need a little bit more time. But yeah, I am from a very very small town in East Texas. It's called Corrigan. There's like 1,100 people there, and I grew up in a evangelical Assembly of God religious home. My grandfather was a preacher, and it was very fire brimstone. Basically a cult. I think you could call it a cult.
Yeah. Did y'all
And
get filled with the Holy Spirit and speak in tongues and all that?
I always thought there was something wrong with me because I just couldn't get filled with the Holy Spirit and I wasn't
Interesting.
speaking in tongues. And
Yeah.
in the church where I was raised, it was very, people fell out in the spirit, or
Mhm.
they were laying on the ground, or they were running around the church speaking in tongues or laughing hysterically. And yeah, it's really messed up when you're like praying and praying and praying for that and that never happens, and you're like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And
Right.
years later you're like, no, I don't think there was anything wrong with me. I
Yeah.
think, but yeah, the religious upbringing that I had and the sort of negativity surrounding it spurred me to study all different types of religions. I went to UNT, and my bachelor's degree is in philosophy and religion, world religions, and then I went to seminary after that and got my master's degree in ethics and theology. And so it's been a very long religious road for me, trying to kind of figure things out.
Mhm.
So I think I've got a good amount of knowledge and a good amount of experience and a lot of hard work, personal work that I had to put in effort to getting over those traumas that we were talking about. And I think Kelly, that's why you and I relate to each other so much, because we're very introspective. Like we
Right.
try to understand ourselves. We try to
Mhm.
look at, okay, what is the behavior that I was doing?
Mhm.
How did I get in that situation? And even when people hurt us, like it's not my fault, but what can I do in the future to avoid it? And I think you and I do a really good job of trying to figure that out for each other. We're very self-aware.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree.
Yeah. So I think that's just been the long road. It started there and it ended up here. So I grew up very, very poor. We were one of the poorest families that I knew. And, without anybody's help or anybody's support, I think I managed to be fairly successful. I like
Oh,
to
yeah,
think that I
definitely.
am. But again, it was a really hard road to get here. So um, I don't know. It's hard to decide where to start in telling kind of that
I know, right?
story.
Sorry, I kind
Mhm.
of just threw that out. And I know, like, even for myself, when somebody wants to know my background, it's like, wow, like, how long do we have?
I know, right? Right.
Like, how many traumatic stories do you want? Like, because I
Exactly.
probably have a lot.
Uh-huh.
But in your studies, you did study abroad for a little bit, right?
I did. So I went to France and I did study abroad in undergrad, and so I just needed to get my language credits, and that was really interesting. I did move to Scotland at one point for a man, and if we were going to talk about traumas, overcoming them, and lessons learned in the context of the smitten kitten, I've got lots of relationship ones.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm a biggest advocate for is um, speaking about and being very transparent about the relationships that I've been in that have been physically and emotionally abusive.
Hmm.
Um, Mostly because I hid it so well. And you learn a lot when you come on the other side of that fence, like when you understand how people's perception of you kind of keeps you from wanting to express what's happening or what's going on. You
Right.
know, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment, and people always look at me or talk to me and they're like, oh, she's really smart, like she's got her career together, she's got this, that, or the other. But from a relationship perspective, from an emotional perspective, I was a nightmare because I had
Hmm.
no role models. Like, Kelly, I don't think either of us ever had good role models on relationships,
Not
right?
at all. No, I
Right.
had to basically deprogram myself and then like start from like
Mm-hmm.
scratch. Yeah. Hmm.
100%. Um, the turning point for me was actually around the time that I met you. So I've been, I think on a if I was saying I was sober, clean and sober, I've been clean and sober from relationship drama and the problems that come along with it, because it is addictive in a
Hmm.
way that people don't really think about. But when you've grown up and you've been raised with a traumatic life, when things, just really
Right.
terrible things have happened, you've got the same chemical responses to
Hmm.
trauma and to negativity that people do when they take drugs or when they're drinking or whatever it is. It's a self perpetuating cycle of brain chemicals that release in situations that you're used to. And just like an addict, like, you have to take the road to recovery and accountability and understanding how to get out of that so that you don't fall off the wagon again.
Yep.
um, and that is how I met you, though. So, like, if we go back to that real quick, I met you because I was saying yes to things and trying to put myself in a different situation than I had ever been in before.
Okay.
I think one of the funniest things is I had no idea that your casting call was for hip hop.
Well, I mean, not technically, but yeah, I do a lot of hip hop. So
Yeah, yeah. And so I showed up and I'm like, I don't know anything about this, but I wanted to, like, experience something different and make myself uncomfortable and put myself into different positions and try new things. And I got to meet you, and you're one of the best people that I know.
oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, I got to grow and learn, and from a situation that I would have never been in before, because I knew that I was in a cycle and I was trying to find ways to break it.
Yeah.
And you got to try new things to break that cycle, right?
Definitely. Now, just touching on some of your past relationships, and how they were traumatic, or they were kind of still repeating that same cycle. Now, and this is just speaking from the outside, which I mean, we are friends, so I think you would tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think you're in a very healthy and stable relationship right now with a guy that I definitely approve of. He's very sweet to you. He's very just even like whenever y'all came to the Lorenzo Hotel that one time, and he was like, "Hey, can I do anything to help? I'll go downstairs and find," and then came up with like an array of sodas. You know what I mean? Like he didn't just go down and get like one soda
Mm-hmm.
like we asked. He was like, "Well, here they have this."
You have
And
options.
yeah, and I think that's just his character. He's just very, how do I put this correctly? Like he just knows what needs to be done before it needs to be done, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
he thinks outside of himself rather than like,
Yes. Yes.
like some men are just so like, focused on like one thing. It's like they
Yep.
can't think outside of that. And, I don't think Daniel's really that way.
No,
And when we first met, he was actually, I think y'all were kind of at the beginning of your
we
relationship, and
were, and he was in Asia.
yeah, he was. And and you were kind of in that thought process of crap, this guy's going to come back and need a place to live, and I think he's going to live with me, and and like almost kind of like anxiety about that
Mhm.
situation because of your past.
Yep.
Um so with that being said, what do you think that you did this time to attract somebody that is like what they call like a more high value man? Like do you think that you did anything different, or
Yeah.
kind of speak on that a little bit?
So I had when I met Daniel, I was literally in the process of escaping a physically violent relationship. I'd been living in Frisco, and the man that I was with was really violent. He was a serious alcoholic, and I had to basically disappear without any contact or trace whatsoever. And he went to work one day, and my friends came over, and we 100% eliminated me from the house as though I never existed.
Wow.
All phone numbers were changed, all common friends were deleted, everything was blocked. I had to disappear because, as you know, most women who are killed by their partners are killed in the process of trying to leave them.
Yeah.
And we had already had like situations where guns were fired. We had situations where he was like tracking people down the road with his guns. Like it was really, really bad. And so I left that relationship, and it was the first time where I didn't go directly into another relationship.
Okay.
And that was a really, really big key thing for me, because I was addicted to romance and relationships. 100% was a sucker for it, because I wasn't shown love in any kind of a good, positive way growing
Right.
up. So I
Yeah.
was desperate for it,
Yeah.
and willing to let any and every red flag fly before I just to try to get a chance at finding it. Um, and so I had admitted what had happened in the relationship, because I hid it from everybody. My family didn't know, my friends didn't know. Just right at the very end, my friends that helped me move, they knew. I was very, very ashamed. It it's really embarrassing to be in that situation, because you're
For
like,
sure.
oh, if I'm so smart, then why did I get into this situation? How am I so dumb? And it was actually a back-to-back physically abusive relationship. So then I felt even stupider and even less able to speak.
Yeah.
And in the process of that, I had this one really, really good friend who I think I can credit with kind of helping me change my life.
Mm-hmm.
I told him what had happened, and we were talking, and he said, you know what you need to do is you need to write a list. You need to make a list of everything it is that you want in a relationship. And this
Right.
list should include everything that you don't want, that you
Right.
won't accept, and everything that you do want and that you require. And I thought it was one of those silly, like, make an affirmation and speak it into existence
Right.
things.
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't that at all. It was actually helping me to create boundaries that I wouldn't cross in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
So I had some things like political affiliation, or
Yeah.
I'm like very politically
Yes.
active, so that's
Uh-huh.
important to me, right? But
Mm-hmm.
also little things like had to let me say no to them, or um uh, their religion, like they couldn't be dogmatically religious, or they had to be the same religion as me, like either way. and
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote this very, very detailed list. And I dated a couple of people before Daniel and I actually went on our first date, and it helped me to say, this person, they did the wrong thing, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go on this date with this person because they're not meeting my list. And it helped me to have something tangible, because it's like being a kid. You need like really strict rules when
Right.
you've when you've gone like off the rails for
For
so
sure.
long.
Yeah.
And I did this, and Daniel was the first person that had all the things I wanted and never did any of the things that I didn't. And if he ever came close to any of those things that I didn't want, I was able to like talk to him about it, or work my way through it, or we would be able to have that conversation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because nobody's perfect, right? Daniel's not
Oh, for sure.
perfect,
Yeah.
but he's he's sitting over there.
He's like, wait, I'm not.
Wait,
I'm
what?
just kidding.
But yeah, every time I meet somebody that's having problems with relationships, I tell them the same thing now. I'm like, you've got to make a list, because
Right.
say that you don't have a list, and you just kind of have this like vague perception of the things that you do and don't want. And then you meet somebody and they're like fine as hell, or they're like a real smooth talker, or whatever.
Or they love bomb you.
Or they love bomb you. Fuck, love bombing. Let's come back to that, because that's a
Okay.
serious problem.
Yes.
Um, you are willing to let those things slide,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you're like, oh, it's not that bad, or oh, he had a really hard upbringing. He's actually really sweet when you get to know him, or he doesn't
Right.
mean it that way. And then you
Yep.
just start like making excuses for somebody that you just met anyway.
Right.
Um, and this really, really helped me to speak what I wanted and be able to stand my ground on it. Um, and I tested him. I did test him on it. I tried to say no to things. I didn't make myself available for him all of the time.
Right.
I tested his reaction to those kinds of things to see what it was that the way that he was going to respond to it, because
Right.
a lot of men can't deal with that boundary issue, right? If
Right.
you
Hmm.
say no, they guilt you or shame you, or
Or move on.
yeah, or they go cold, and it's like, okay, if
Yeah.
I can't, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Um, and the second thing was is I made myself a timeline, and this is kind of embarrassing, but it's what I had to do. So basically, since I moved out, I went from one relationship to the next. I mean, just no time in between whatsoever.
Hmm.
And I set myself targets or goals. And it was like, okay, I am not going to date anybody for 60 days, which I guess that's not that long, but like
I mean, for
when
some
you were
people.
me, it was like a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't even want to like talk to somebody like that. And
Right.
then after that, I'm not going to be in a relationship. Like, I'm not going to be somebody's girlfriend for 6 months. I am going to do this one target thing. And for me, it was I wanted to go to Israel. So I was like, before I go to Israel, I'm not doing nothing. I need to get my brain right. I need to work on me. I had a goal that was only me oriented. It was about my spirituality and it was about my growth and development. And when I was ready, like I came back and I was super ready to get into that relationship. And he told me he was going to Asia for 6 months.
Right.
And I was so upset about that. And I was like, because in my head, I was like, okay, I met all of my like timelines and I did all my things and I'm ready, I'm
Right.
ready. And he's like, well, I'm leaving. And I was really sad, but I remember telling him, I was like, you know what? I just got back from Israel, and one of my big prayers was that anything that's meant for me will be for me, and
Right.
anything that's not will go out of my life.
Yeah.
And clearly, you're not meant for me. That's not what happened, but that was my attitude towards it, right? Like I
Yeah.
wasn't willing to just bend and do whatever. Um, but yeah, I think that if you are addicted to relationships, which a lot of us are, right? Or we're addicted to attention, negative or positive
Right.
attention, right?
Yeah.
And if you have been, it, our childhoods were really traumatic, both
Hmm.
from, I think, and I'm not sure, I don't remember about your father, but mine was from both my father's perspective, was the worst that you can imagine. And then
Right.
from my mother's perspective, on the other side, same as well.
Right.
And I was starving to death for attention. And
Yeah.
I had to back up and like give myself that attention and set those important priorities for me and have those goals that were just for me. And I know people are always like, oh, well, you got to work on you. But like, how do you do that? Like, what do you do? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's, set yourself goals, have yourself objectives, make yourself a timeline if you need to. Like, just give yourself the space to not be like super thirsty, which
Yeah.
I was, right? I was like so thirsty.
Well, it's definitely attention seeking, and I think also a lot of that, some of the things that I'm hearing, and I think that I found in myself too, is that we wanted to be accepted so bad from our family, and they weren't giving us that attention that we became
Mhm.
people pleasers, and so it was like, like that fear of abandonment, was really. I mean, that's a real thing. And so it's like you latch onto somebody and you just need that attention from them so bad that, you're willing to do whatever it takes just to keep that person there, and just so that you're not abandoned again. So I think that's
Yeah.
definitely something that comes from upbringing and whatnot.
I 100% agree with that.
Because that's where that those boundaries, like being able to say no. You know what I mean? Because I
Mhm,
heard you say that earlier. They had to accept no from you. And it's like
mhm.
when you grow up, without being such a people pleaser or whatever happened to turn you into that, it's like you're so afraid to say no because then that person will go away and then you're alone again. And so
Yeah,
just having the guts to be able to say, you know what, I'm not gonna this is what I don't want, and I am gonna say no next time. And if that person leaves, and so be it. And being able to get to that place where you're secure enough with somebody being in or out of your life. I mean, I think that's a huge step
mhm.
into finding a healthy relationship for sure.
Yeah, and you almost like have this misperception that you can control whether or not somebody is going to be in your life and how involved they're going to be by
Yeah.
your behavior.
Yeah.
Like I can do something to make him love me. I can do something to make him stop cheating on me. If I
Right.
just behaved differently, he wouldn't get so drunk every night. Like, it's all of these things that when you're a kid, like you learn to walk on eggshells,
Hmm.
particularly if you're in like a sexually or physically abusive relationship, or even an emotionally abusive one, right? You learn that anything you do can trigger it, or
Right.
you think anything that you do can trigger it.
Yeah.
If you change your tone of voice just slightly, if you close a cabinet too loud, like any of these things those are the causes of the physical or emotional violence, right? It's not the person that's abusing you, it's not their
Right.
fault, it's your fault. I'm doing something to deserve this or warrant this or attract this,
Hmm.
and it's so hard to break that out of your head to say like, no, I should be able to live as myself authentically and happily. And uh, if that guy's gonna cheat, if that guy's gonna hit me, if this woman is going to berate me constantly, like that's them.
Yeah.
That's all them. I can't do anything to stop that except fucking leave,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
That's so hard. It's so hard to disassociate their behavior from your behavior, and that those two things, I mean, to a degree, right? Like you can be a total bitch to somebody, and
Right.
I don't mean that all your behavior is justified, but
Right.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean.
Yeah. And also, coming from a religious background, just for me personally, in my, my last major relationship, which was my ex-husband, the father of my two youngest children, you know, I could just love him through it. And they teach you that. Like they have like
Hmm.
the Love Dare. That's a book that I actually like work through. And it was like you give them like, I think it's like a 40 days where you just love them unconditionally. And somehow that's supposed to like change their heart. And I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like maybe it works for some people, but I think that's a very toxic thing to teach anybody that, if marriage is so sacred that, if this man happens to be abusive emotionally, physically, or whatever, or just like, all the things that if you just love him enough that God will change his heart. And
Yeah.
unless they want their heart to be changed, it just doesn't work because
No.
I mean, and I lived through that like for a good solid, year or two, especially during my pregnancy with my youngest son, and the year after that I stayed. I thought, if I just was a good enough Christian, if I went to church and did all the right things and just, and prayed hard enough and encouraged him to come to church and encouraged him to do these, counseling things with me, and none of it worked. So
Mm-mm.
anyway, I
Yeah.
think
Uh, I completely agree with you. I think that, and this isn't a bash to Christianity or
right.
all
Yeah.
religions or all um, expressions of Christianity, but I can say that for me and in my experience, and my grandfather was the preacher, and he was an incredibly abusive man. He used religion to hate and divide and control people. And so
Yeah.
I want to be careful to say that when I talk about this particular experience, I don't think it's everybody, but I think
Right.
for a lot of people, it is very true, right?
Yes.
Their lived experience, mine and yours for sure.
Hmm.
That you're taught if something bad happens in your life, it's because you're not right with God,
Right.
right?
You deserved
Like,
it.
yeah, like if I would have prayed hard enough, I didn't pray hard enough. I didn't have my heart right with God. I was backsliding, and these things, these catastrophic things happened to me, and it teaches you, it ingrains within you that all of that stuff is your fault. And um the worst example of this for me and in my life was, and I mean I've carried it with me, it's still something I work through, is that um my birth father was a deacon in the church, and he was a pedophile, a serious serial pedophile.
Yeah.
And when he was discovered, and when we left, and I spent over a year in hiding and on the run from him because he was telling people that he was going to kill us, even the judge and the DA. And I was one of the first children in the state of Texas to have both parental and grandparents' rights terminated, um, because of how bad this situation was. And forever, forever, I would be prayed hands on in a prayer circle in the congregation, that please God, don't let the sins of the father, you know,
Oh, that's
impact or be
yeah.
like I was like I was already contaminated, that what he did was now my cross to bear. It was my fault, that something that it wasn't going to be broke, right? They would, take this yoke from this child. I'm like 11 years old, and you're
Mhm.
not worried about me individually. You're worried about the sins of my father. Like,
Right.
I, it just taught me that there was something desperately and horrifically blemished about who I was. And when I wanted to participate in the church, when I was begging God to please, like, let me speak in tongues, like, let me fall out in the spirit, and
Right.
those things never happened. Of course, in my head, it's because my heart is dirty and unclean and damaged.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with me. And it played out over and over and over again, until, sorry, I live in Deep Ellum, so it's very loud outside. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it impacted me for forever. It always taught me that there was something wrong and damaged with me. And then when I got into relationships when I was older, I was so grateful to these men because, well, clearly they accepted this damaged version of me, and
Right.
I should be grateful for that. And then I
Mhm.
just, yeah, it self perpetuated that sort of uh acceptance
Self-hate,
of any,
basically.
yeah, God, self-hate. Like, there was always something wrong with me, and I just carried it for forever. And we get into these situations where no matter how old you are, no matter how far away from that experience you are, no matter how introspective you are, like, you still carry that with you, right? Sometimes
For
there's
sure.
still something wrong. I mean, even sharing this with you, right, in public, you still feel that shame that carries it along with you. Like, you,
Right.
as like woke as I am or whatever, as feminist forward, and that wasn't me. Like, yeah, you still carry that stuff with you, that shame.
Yeah.
And for me, the church just made it worse, made it much worse.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I don't even know how to like correct that as a society because, I have a lot of trauma that was also kind of perpetuated by my church, like they knew how my mother was and they never tried to help me. You know what I mean? Like, and then it was like, oh, you poor thing, we'll pray for you. So then it was like, you know, almost like I was a charity case,
Mm.
instead of them actually trying to help me, get through this trauma or calling CPS. You know what I
Call
mean?
CPS, like, you know what's happening.
And then my old pastor's wife, or like the church that I grew up in, mostly, she admitted that she didn't know it was that bad. So, I want to think that she's telling the truth, but it was, it was hard to miss. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're just not looking or you don't want to see it,
right,
right? Because then that's that's too much to deal with. The easiest thing to do, and we do this as a society all the time, is we're just going to pray for you.
right.
Like,
Thoughts
these
and
things are
prayers.
thoughts and prayers. Like, okay, thoughts and prayers and what? Like, you've got to
Yeah,
actually actively do something. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Um,
it took me lots and lots of therapy. I don't know if you did therapy or not, but I did self-help books and, I did one-on-one counseling and I did group counseling and I did like a 12-step program that was like, it's called Celebrate Recovery, which, even though it was faith-based, because I was still very much a Christian at the time, which I'm not right now. I'll just put that out there. I don't
Me
subscribe
either.
to the Christian faith. I think that Jesus was awesome and he existed and he said some really great things. And I think if Christians truly followed after Christ, that we wouldn't have these stigmas. But unfortunately, there was many books before that, and some of them after that, and interpretations of it,
Mhm.
that I think kind of are people use, like you said, to control the masses or to make what they're doing is right, or just whatever. I mean, it's just people use the Bible in the most perverted ways. But with that being said, I did do Celebrate Recovery, which is a Christian based program. But what was really great about that, it wasn't just about being an addict. because people have hurts, habits, and hangups, and it could come out in many different ways of being overly sexual, eating disorders,
Mm-hmm.
being codependent. There's anger issues. I mean, there's just like a whole array of things that because you are hurt, or these habits or these hangups that you have that you can't get over is causing you not to be your full potential. And I think that that program actually really helped me a lot, and I would even recommend it to people who might not be Christians, or maybe somebody out there that wants to do a similar program that's not faith based. I think that would be really great. But yeah, it took me at least 3 years of just you know a lot of, like you said, like looking within and figuring out where I'm messed up in the head, like where my
Mm-hmm.
thinking is messed up, and how do I keep falling into this trap of these abusive men or these, unfulfilling relationships. Um, and it's not easy work, but I think
No, and therapy is great, right?
mhm,
Like I am a huge, huge proponent and advocate for therapy. I think it's got definitely has its place. Therapy by itself isn't going to fix you, but I don't know if this is true for you, but our the perspective of mental health or therapy in the church was that that's actually the devil,
right.
right? Like
Hmm.
the only thing that's wrong with you is that Satan has now somehow entered your heart, and you've got to praise Satan, the demonic forces that are all around us. Like I was raised to believe that there are literally demons everywhere trying to impact and hurt your life and tear you away from God. And in anything to address any type of mental health issue was just admitting that God wasn't big enough to fix your problems.
Exactly.
And it was so toxic. I remember this one time, my birth mother, she had physical problems, and they were going to prescribe her a medication that was also an antidepressant, but it's a neurological medication, right? They work brain chemistry in different ways. And she refused to take it because it I'm not going to take an antidepressant. That's what the devil wants you to do. And so for years, I went with completely unaddressing any of my issues, any of the stuff that was going on in my head, because I thought that it was weakness, that that's clearly just weakness, and it's going to take me away from God. And so
Yeah.
I love to hear that you were able to find faith-based therapy that worked for you. That's
Yeah.
It's always great when you can find those. That wasn't how I experienced it. I went through several therapists, right? Therapy
Yeah.
doesn't always work. It took me
Yeah.
several times to not, I was so good at faking it
Hmm.
because I had to, like, my birth mother was constantly, and my grandparents as well, like, you don't tell our business. Like,
Hmm.
nobody knew anything that was
Yeah.
going on with us. One of my best friends um, in high school had no clue until years later when I told him what was going on, because I was so good at faking it and putting on this like front for other people, that I did it with my therapist too.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
They'll only give their therapist like a little bit. So it took several therapists before I actually had one call me out on my bullshit.
That's good.
That's when you know you have a good therapist, right?
Yeah.
They see through you.
Yep.
But therapy by itself, like those sessions that you do, those aren't what's going to fix you. It's that stuff you do when you go away. It's the application of those skills and tools
Right.
that they give you that's actually going to impact your life. And so, I've talked to a lot of people. I'm very open about, my past trauma. Like it doesn't impact me to talk about it. Like I like to share because I know that I can connect with other people,
Hmm.
and make them feel like they're not alone. But um, yeah, it's all about you actually making the decision to change something in your daily life, the way that you're acting, behaving, or what you're attracting. I when we first started talking today, you said, like, how did you stop attracting those men in your life,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And that is 100% true. Oh
Hmm.
my God, it was me attracting it. And there's a very, very fine line between victim blaming
Right.
and taking accountability for
Right.
yourself.
Hmm.
Okay. So I want to make sure I say that before I
Yeah.
speak the
Of
rest of what
course.
I'm going to
Hmm.
say. It was never my fault that I was hurt, but it was definitely my behavior that was perpetuating the cycle of attracting the men that
For
were
sure. Yeah.
like this.
And I'm
And
glad you went back over that because it could have
mhm,
been taken, the wrong way for sure.
Yeah, no, I never deserved any of that.
Hmm.
Nothing that they did was something I deserved. But the only way I was going to stop attracting those kind of men is, and this is just an analogy I've always had for myself, like I had victim written right across my
Yep.
forehead
Hmm.
and in a lettering that only abusive men could see.
Yep. Yep.
Other people
You were
couldn't.
prey. You were prey, and they could smell it from a mile away.
Absolutely.
Yes. Same.
100%.
Yep.
I told you I had two back-to-back physically abusive relationships, and
Yeah.
I met the last one, the one that I disappeared from, while I was trying to leave the first one.
Right.
And what attracted me the most to him was he saw me when nobody else did. And one day we were like outside. I smoked at this time. I was outside smoking a cigarette with him at work, and I was just kind of complaining about my relationship, and he just looked at me and was like, so when are you going to tell somebody that he's hitting you? And I was like shook. Like
Right.
I hadn't told anybody that,
Yeah.
right? Nobody, but he knew.
Yeah. He knew.
The reason he knew is because he
He was
could
that
pick
type of
it up.
person. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And it took so much freaking work to wash that off my head. Um, I think sometimes I still like get into situations where, it pops up a little bit again, but
Right.
it was not my fault,
Right.
but I was the only one that could stop it,
Exactly.
right? And you I think the hardest thing out of all of the things you can do to work on yourself is the boundaries.
Yeah.
100% the boundaries.
Yes.
Um, I mean, that's really hard, right? Like, I don't know if you've
When
had
you've
problems with your boundaries
oh, for
before.
sure. Well, I mean, I was never taught boundaries as a child.
Mm-mm.
My mother never taught me boundaries. Any boundaries that I did put up for myself were always demolished by my family. You know, so yeah, you basically learn that your boundaries don't matter. So why even have them?
Mm-hmm.
And then so I'm big on my children having boundaries. I mean, even just the small things is like, and a lot of people in our age group and older can relate. That aunt that wants to kiss you and you don't really want to kiss her, but you're made to kiss her, or that uncle's lap that you're made to sit on and give him a hug.
Mm-hmm.
And like even though he gives you creepy vibes, you still have to be like, oh hi, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and your family is like, oh, you go over there, you go give him a hug, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, but I don't want to, like, I don't feel comfortable having this person touch me, and nobody cares, and so like my youngest son, and he's been this way since he was a baby, like he just didn't ever really give kisses even as a baby, like when, and Caitlin was the exact opposite. She loved to give kisses, but Ryan just didn't. And when he grew up, it was like I could tell that he was uncomfortable hugging. And my family's a very, loving, hugging, touchy-feely family. And so I would help him by telling my family members like, hey, he doesn't really like to give hugs, but he'll give you a high five, giving
Yes.
him an out. And my family, was very receptive to that, obviously, because I let all the assholes in my family out of my life, so the ones that are around, like, respect my boundaries. And I've had to even have my own boundaries, like with my grandmother, like, hey man, like, I'm not my mom. Every time you talk to me, it's negative. Like, I'm trying, and this was during the time that I was going through, all the therapy and stuff. And I was like, I'm really trying to change my life right now. Like, I just tried to commit suicide. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I needed to be healthy for me, and if that meant not speaking to my grandmother anymore because she was
Oh
so
yeah.
negative and like, you're just like your mom, you only attract, and like just speaking all these like negative things to me all the time. I'm like, I'm not like my mom, I'm doing a lot better than she was at my age, and I need you to see that, or I can't have this relationship with you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother's the matriarch. She's the queen of our family. So telling my grandmother something like that at first, she was pretty pissed off about it. But I think, after I think it took her a year to come back around. And since then she's been a very positive influence on my life, telling me that she's proud of me all the time. Cause I told her I needed that. I need you to be proud of me. I need you to tell me that you're proud of me. I can't take all this negativity all the time. Like, I just try to kill myself. You know what I mean? Like, please, like, let's change. And she did. And so, being able to have those type of boundaries with not only your family members or and your friends, I think is really important.
I think you made a great point just there, is that you said it's not just about saying what the boundary is of what you don't want, what you're not going to let in your life. Like, I cut my entire birth family out of
Right.
my life
Hmm.
because I had to, right?
Yeah.
But the really big growth factor there is being able to say what I need.
Yeah.
That's a boundary too, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Hmm.
my minimum expectation, is here's what I need to proceed. And being able to say that and articulate it, I think that's really hard as well. Like, I don't know, what do I need? Like,
Right.
being able to figure that out. Um, yeah, I mean, that was so hard. I know now that I need to hear from somebody the way that they feel,
Right.
because I still, like, as much work as I've done, as professionally, developed as I am, as much as I think I've grown since my past, you know, traumas in my life, like, I still need to hear it because my mind does assume the negative a
Right.
lot.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not calling me, if you're not speaking to me, if because I'm an empath, like, if I pick up the slightest variation in your aura or your mood or
Hmm.
whatever, like, it's my fault still. And I try not to be overly needy, but to be able to speak that, like, hey, I'm a words of affirmation kind of person. I need you to tell me
Yes.
how
Hmm.
you're feeling, because if you don't tell me, then I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm a physical touch person.
Yeah.
I need to feel it and I need to hear it. That's just
Yeah.
who I am.
Hmm.
Um, it's really hard to say what it is that you want. I mean, when you've come from places where we've come from, like, there's so much work to do.
Yeah, for sure. It
and
really is.
I God,
And
one
it's
of
constant because
yes,
it's so easy to slip
yes,
back. So
yes.
until you've built that strong foundation, it's like two steps forward, one step back, two steps forward, but
Hmm.
at least you're moving forward.
I totally agree. And I don't know about for you, but trying to not compare yourself to other people who didn't have trauma,
Right.
or didn't have the suffering, because it's not just the traumatic experience, it's also like I we didn't have any money, we didn't have anything, like, being
Yeah.
able to get, like, an education, like, that's a huge deal, like, not
Hmm.
having an established pattern. And I find a lot of times that I do have a hard time dealing with the success of other people my age, or where they are with their families or being married or whatever it is, and judging myself based off of, I've been divorced, or I've not had a family, or I don't have something like they have. And there's not it's not a race,
Right.
right? Like, I can run it slower if I need to, because I started from way further back than you guys
Right.
did.
Exactly. With
Because it
very more disadvantages for sure.
yeah, definitely. Eh, because it can sort of perpetuate the depression of I'm not good enough all over again,
Right.
right? And you just, like, fall back into the negativity of self-doubt. And yeah, it's still, that depression shit's always going to be nipping at the heels. But
Hmm.
I guess we should be so proud of ourselves, because we're having to deal with all of this stuff, and we're like, look,
Yeah.
like, I'm not on drugs, and I'm not, like,
Yeah.
like, I'm
No,
kind of proud of that.
you've done really
Um,
great. And
and
I
by
think
drugs, I mean meth. I just want to, like, affirm that. Like, I don't care if you smoke weed. It's
yeah,
just like, I grew up in East Texas. Like, I'm not on meth. I'm doing real good.
I didn't want to share that for you if you didn't want to put that out there in the public, but getting off drugs on your own is not falling into that cycle of abuse is definitely something that just because my mother is a meth addict, and she's been one since before I was born, and she falls back into it all the time. Like, I mean, since I was 13, I don't think there's ever been a break from her, but like there were times in my younger years where she would be clean for a little bit, and then and then something would trigger her, and then she'd go back full blown. Well, it'd always start with dabbling, obviously, and then
Hmm.
but I have several friends who didn't go to rehab. I don't know if you went to rehab or anything like that, but
No, I I never tried meth before, but everyone around me was on it.
Yeah.
Every single person I was friends with,
Yeah,
my
that's
my
right.
my first husband, his baby's mother killed herself and her other child
Oh
because she was
gosh.
up on meth all night and she drove
Yeah.
into the gas tank of a 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
His mother died of a heroin overdose on Mother's Day, like while we were together. Like I have been constantly surrounded by
Gotcha. Okay.
serious drug addiction.
Yeah.
My addictions were different, but they were
Yeah.
still addictions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, it's, coming from that background, like I had every reason to be a total fuck up. I had
Yes.
every reason in the world. I mean, sexual abuse, child of an addict. I mean, at one point, I mean, I've done meth. At one point I was selling it to my mom because if I gave her what she wanted, then I got to go do whatever I wanted. And I
Right.
was 16 and wanted to be grown, and so I have every reason in the book to be a total screw up. And somehow I came out okay. Like I'm not 100% like, an angel or anything, but I definitely from what I could have been, the path that I was definitely going down there for a while. I feel like I've risen above. So, I definitely
Yeah.
empathize with being surrounded by those type of people and being able to, I mean, shoot, you're educated, you've studied abroad. I think you're, definitely very smart. I was gonna say one of the smartest people I know, but I do know a lot of smart people, and you're in that group, especially women. Like, I've been super blessed with some amazing women around me, and you're definitely in that. Um, I love you dearly,
I love you too, Callie. I think
and
you're just absolutely incredible.
yeah,
Like,
and and I'm so proud of you.
thank you. I was
So
just gonna say that to you. You stuck it right at that's I was sitting here and I'm just thinking like I am proud of myself and thank you for
yeah,
it means a lot to say that you're proud of me. Those kinds of
yeah,
words of affirmation mean a lot. But God, I'm so proud of you as well. I mean, even in the last 3 years that we've known each other, I feel like both of us have grown so much and we've been
hmm
able to accomplish so much. I mean, like I couldn't be more proud to be your friend.
well, thank you.
And I love that I met you because I was saying yes to things, right?
Yeah,
Like I let positive experiences that I was uncomfortable with into my life, and that's look what I got from that. Like it was
yeah,
very rewarding to get. Um, and I think that you have a wonderful platform to. One of the things I love the most about you is how real you are
oh, thank you.
and
Sometimes I'm too
relatable.
real. People can't handle it.
But people listen, because you're authentically yourself and you have a platform where you can reach out and have these conversations. Like this is a hard conversation to have, right?
Yeah.
Like to be open and raw and say like, look, here's all my dark secrets. Like I
Mhm.
want somebody else to be able to benefit from the experience that I've had, or to feel like you're not by yourself, you're not alone.
For sure.
And that's a big deal. And I'm really honored to for you to let me participate in that
Yeah, definitely.
because yeah, I mean, you give me an opportunity to speak out loud and say these things, and it means a lot to me to be able to share that with other people because there's so many women that are suffering from,
Yep.
and maybe they didn't even have that trauma growing up, but they have the trauma that they're going through right now. And um, when I was reading some of the things that you wrote, like it just reminded me of it, like why that was so important to you to write and what's so important for you to share is so that other people can get the benefit of knowing that they're not alone and to be encouraged to move forward one step at a time, like however
Yep.
quickly or slowly that you need to.
Yep. And I'm kind of on this kick with the smitten kitten as far as I'm trying to find women who, you know, have had bad experiences in the past, whether it was in life or love or whatever, and then talk about how they were able to overcome that to be able to be happy in love. At this moment, I'm not in a committed relationship, but I know that my the quality of the men that I'm dating and the way that they treat me and respect me and I'm able to say, hey, I don't like this. And if you want to continue to see me, then that has to change. And if you're not that into me, then I can respect that,
Mhm.
and then either and be willing to walk away and, you know, having them either walk away and me be okay with it or adjust what they're doing to make me happy is huge. And so I know that I'm on the right step to be able to find that person eventually, and there's not a time limit on that. Like I could be 50
No,
years old before I get married. I don't really give a crap. I could never get married ever. You know what I mean? But, we all want to,
same.
yeah, we all want to have, eventually have somebody to share our life with, and maybe you don't. Maybe you're good with being single. I just can't imagine, dying alone or, I don't know. Like that, I think that's that's my driving force is thinking about, my children are going to be gone one day and, I don't want to be that person that dies and nobody knows for
There
like
is
a week,
nothing. I mean,
you know?
I look, and I'm not to be macabre or anything, but my uncle just died. We buried him this beginning of this month, and because my family's so toxic, he was dead for 2 weeks before anybody found him in his apartment. So
Oh,
that
it's
is
just
a
awful.
real,
That's
true fear.
awful.
It's
Yes.
fucking awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with wanting a relationship,
Right.
wanting to be married, wanting certain things in life, not wanting to be alone. Like, I think that we have this weird reverse stigma we've created
Yeah.
where I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need no man. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I have my own money. I have my own success, but I want it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I've been very clear with what I want and what my timelines are. And like, this is, I, I'm 35 years old. I don't want to be 40 when I have my first baby, like
Yeah.
there's certain things and I'm very clear to articulate what it is that I want, but nobody should feel like, yeah, ashamed to want those things in life. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with wanting that. And I know that just from our conversations that we've had and the way that you approach men differently and the way that you set those boundaries and
Yeah.
you're working through those things, like that you are going to attract something that is going to last and it is going to be what you want because you've put so much effort into getting there, right? You're not
Right.
taking the easy way out. The easiest way out is to make yourself available for whenever a man wants you to be
Right.
available,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Which is easy to do.
yeah, right? Like, be available on their timeline and just get that attention however you can get it, or
Hmm.
to let your boundaries slide or take whatever and get those short-term gratifications. I said that my addiction, and it's a real addiction, was physical relationships. And
Hmm.
so like, what can I do to not just jump right into that? What can I do to make sure that I'm not getting the quick fix? Like,
Right.
I'm getting something that's going to be longer lasting. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. I'm definitely addicted to sex. Go ahead and put that out there. Can't help it. I like to have sex. And that
Yeah,
that that is a problem though. It definitely can screw some things up.
I do not know how you manage in the times of COVID though, right? Like, that's got to
Yeah.
have made the whole like relationship hard enough, but like this the sex need even harder.
Oh yeah. I got lucky on to be honest with you. I happened to man, how do I put this without like just uh so I've been seeing somebody and he's been real consistent with me, and he's very good to me, as far as being that masculine energy that I need. And it came at the right time, and we're just kind of dealing with it, as far as all of this stuff is going on. But but there again, I could walk away and be okay at the same time. So um yeah, I just gotta, before they shut everything down again, obviously from like, what was it, March through
we
like June-ish.
I mean, we
Um,
are at our
yeah,
same numbers as we were, I think, in June.
yeah,
So
yeah. So, they kind of opened things up again there for a second. And, y- you know, the right things happened and I accepted, a date from him basically. And I don't want to say gave him a chance because that sounds pretty,
yeah,
like of me. So I don't want to
you
say
saw
that,
what
but
you saw what happened.
yeah. And so I, I guess I opened my perspective up a little bit and, let somebody else in because I had just recently been pretty hurt, you know, right off the bat. And so from April until June, I was still kind of coping with that. And I think I finally closed that chapter. And as soon as it's like one door closes, another one opens, so I
Hmm.
finally closed that chapter emotionally and in my head, like, okay, this is not going to be what I want it to be. And I'm going to have to be okay with it. It's not like I was okay with it. I made myself okay with it. But yeah, he made time for me every week and was the person that I guess I needed at that time. And, things have been going pretty good. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, luckily for my addiction,
Oh, I forgot about that. That's
I was
right.
addicted. I had to detoxify.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Sh-
Detoxification, right?
yeah, shout out to Blue Jay for that one. But it's funny because that's kind of been a joke between me and some of my friends for a long time, because I've known I'm addicted to sex for a long time.
So, if we are talking about ways to overcome our addictions and, move forward, and like, there's nothing wrong with like satisfying a need on your
Right,
schedule when that's what's right in your life. I want to make sure I am not a slut shamer. You
right.
go and get whatever you want whenever you want. This conversation is about being addicted to the need for a relationship,
Right. Yeah.
the want
Yeah.
uh, for sex. Like, there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. I just want to
Just be safe,
just be
get
safe,
tested,
get tested,
make sure
have
you're not using
consent,
sex to try to, get
fill a
into
gaping hole.
relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of
But
that stuff. But yes.
there's I think that we've done a really good job of identifying red flags. And remember the conversation, it's not just the red flags, it's the yellow flags that are really
Or the
important to
pink
look out.
flags.
The pink flags, yes, like what
Yep.
are the pink flags I'm not paying attention to too? And you brought that up just a minute ago. The worst one, the hardest one to not just like accept, is the love bombing,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I remember when I first heard the term love bombing, I'm like, oh fuck, that has been what's going on in like every single one of these relationships.
Yep.
My relationship started, I mean, we were together. We were engaged in 3 months. Like,
Yeah.
that's living together probably in that amount of time as well. Um, and just in case like anybody doesn't know what this is, it's when somebody completely overwhelms you with either physical or verbal or monetary affection. They're buying
Hmm.
you all this stuff, they're telling you that you are the most beautiful, wonderful, like
You're their
somehow they can
soulmate like
get
within
their
2 days.
soulmate. Yes,
Yes.
if a man tells you that you are their soulmate or that they are in love with you in like the tiniest amount of time, like that's a big ass red flag. Do I think
Yep.
it can happen? Maybe. Usually I don't
Yeah.
think that that's the
Mm-mm.
case. Like if they're like overwhelming you with presence, like this stuff isn't normal. And the reason people do this is because it blinds you
Right.
from being able to see all of the stuff that's going on. It's overwhelming. You're overwhelmed,
You
so you
become
can't.
addicted to them.
Yes.
They become your
And
drug.
yeah, and you're like, oh my god, this feels amazing, this feels so
Hmm.
good. And when you're from an experience like you and I've had, when you have a traumatic background, most people I think have like a mid baseline. It's right in the middle
Right.
where this is their life. Their life exists pretty ordinary plain. And then bad things might happen to them and it's pretty flat. And then something good will happen to them, but they kind of stay here.
Right.
But when you're living in the experience like we had, it is either all the way down here or it is
Right.
all the way up here.
Yeah.
There is no in between. So you're constantly just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the love bombing, it's just like my bipolar. It feels really good when I'm manic.
Right.
But the other side of that, and just like the other side of these love bombing relationships, it's the worst experience, the worst depression, the worst feelings that you've ever had.
Right.
And it can fuck your head up because when you do experience something that's right here,
Hmm.
it's boring,
Right. Exactly.
or you
It's not the
know
highs and the lows.
right,
Yeah.
or it's happening like a normal pace, and so
Right.
there's something wrong because
Right.
you don't love me, right?
Right.
And it's so hard. You've got to like recalibrate your experience and interpretation of the events that you have. I think red bombing is, or not red bombing, love bombing
Yeah,
is one of the um, most dangerous traps that you can fall into for sure. There's a bunch of other ones, right? Like I think you and I could probably make a pretty good list for people of pink and red flags.
for sure. Yep. Yeah, moving way too fast. And I was a victim of love bombing just a year ago. But it's, and it actually caused me to do the smitten kitten, because then I started, like, I was love bombed, and it's not that he broke my heart, but he hurt my pride, because
Mm-hmm.
when it didn't turn out to be what I thought it was going to be, I was like, how did I let this man do this to me? Like, and it wasn't even really that I was hurt because I just needed to be with him, more than it was like, my pride was hurt really bad, that somebody fooled me so well. And it's
Mm-hmm.
because I haven't had that type of attention in a long time, or somebody giving me those words of affirmation, or telling me that I was the girl of their dreams, and like all these things that I wanted to hear from my past relationships, you know, and I was overwhelmed by it. I became addicted to that dopamine high, and I really
Mm-hmm.
thought, like, oh wow, this guy is really good to me, and but not realizing how fast we moved in that moment, and how fast things progressed. Because I mean, it was like a flash pan. It was like it progressed and then it went
Yep.
away, like pretty much within, like, I think 6 weeks to 2 months or something like that. And and how fast I moved into it, and then how fast it went away. Like, I was like, how did I do this? And so I started, like, really researching things, just to try to find out, more about, love, and da da, and and then started doing the smitten kitten, and really talking to women who either have really good relationships, or that are strong, independent women, and watching the love coach stuff, and reading books. And one of them was about love bombing. I have a whole list of it. The Narcissist,
Oh God, yes.
being the fallback girl. That was a book that I read. Um, you know, because I always tend to be the fallback girl, you know what I mean? And just
You're
really,
so cool and chill.
yeah, exactly. And that never got me anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Being the cool, chill, laid back, low maintenance girl has never gotten me anywhere. And just, having to admit that to myself, and I'm not saying I'm high maintenance by any means, but I have to be somewhat, you have to maintain this.
Yeah, I
You
think
have
that's
to.
another one of those things that we're like we're guilted into saying that we don't want a relationship, right? Like we've got
Yeah.
all these like conflicting uh social judgments on us, and one of them is like that what men want is you to be low maintenance, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're just, but all that does is teach you that you shouldn't have an opinion
Right.
and that you shouldn't have needs, and like that's not the same thing. Like you
You
can still
shouldn't
be laid
demand
back,
what you want and need,
right?
you know?
Or heaven forbid tell somebody when something is not okay,
Yeah.
right? And so you've got the love bombers, and then the people, the narcissists, when they constantly push at you, push at you, push at you. And then when you do like say like I don't like that, I don't like what you're doing, like it's your fault, you're
Yeah.
interpreting it incorrectly. I can't joke with you, I can't play with you, I can't do anything with you, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, is this me? And that's gaslighting,
Yeah.
right? They're like gaslighting you, pushing your boundaries, love bombing you. That's the opposite side, because when somebody's abusive or manipulative, they have to love bomb you to take you up here because they've got to pull you up from down here,
Mhm.
right? Like that's what that's for. It's so that they can hit you back and forth and back, physically, emotionally, whatever.
Right.
But they can continue to abuse you by just giving you these like instances of I don't know, ecstasy, right?
Mhm.
Like
It's that
you're the most
dopamine.
special, unique, wonderful person. Nobody's ever seen you the way that I see you. Like
Yeah.
bullshit. Yeah, it's tough as hell. Flash pan, I think that's a really really good one. And then I think we always forget the to find the green flags too. I remember talking to you about this one time. Is that and but I always feel like I have to explain myself to make sure that what I say doesn't come out misinterpreted. But
Yeah, that's
um,
appreciated.
it, I'm not talking about checking a man's phone. That's not what we're talking about here. But I remember
No.
one of the biggest green flags because um, my ex cheated on me with every woman that came near him. Um, and I had probably still do struggle with trust issues, but don't want to like damage my relationship because of something that somebody
Right.
else did or did
Overstep
to me.
boundaries
hmm
yourself.
And I remember one of the biggest things for me was that he constantly puts his cell phone on speakerphone. People call him, his friends, his parents, anybody. He answers it on speakerphone, he answers it on Bluetooth. And like cheating, lying men don't do that
Right.
because somebody might slip up or say something. And he never told people they were on Bluetooth either. He just picked up the
Right.
phone and they were. Or like clearly putting their code in their phone in front of you, right? Like if they don't have anything to hide. Or I think you and I talked about this, when a man is always putting his phone down like this,
Yep. That's a
right?
big
Like why is it
sign.
always down? Like you
Yep.
can't have something pop up on the top of it. Like that's
Or
so
like
fucking
sleeping
weird.
with it under the pillow, taking it with them to the bathroom, like religiously, like they can't just like leave their phone in front of
hmm
you face up because God forbid,
Yeah.
they get found out. Yep.
Going outside to take calls.
Yep.
Look, sometimes that's necessary, right? Like you've
Right.
got a serious conversation, but if they're constantly going out and away from you to have their conversations, like that's red flags aren't meant to just be like, you just got to be able to pick up on them, right?
Right.
And so then you decide how you interpret them. That's important, but at least being able to see them. Um, yeah, because my bitch ass was colorblind, red or green, they were the same freaking color. I couldn't see
Right.
anything. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody should make a list of these things,
I'm pretty sure there's definitely
like the
some
flags.
lists out there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
And I think the girl that did the Fallback Girl book, which I highly recommend for anybody that feels like they suffer from that, because I was always like that cool laid back chick who guys would date, and then I never demanded anything more. And they would talk crap about like this high maintenance girl they just broke up with, and then almost give me that negative attention, like, oh, but you're not like that, you're so chill, you're so this, da, da, da. And the next thing you know, they're in a relationship with another high maintenance chick, and then it's like, and then they break up with that one and they come back to you and you feel like, oh,
mhm.
okay, well, obviously I'm doing something right because they keep coming back to me, but I never get any of the benefits of an actual relationship because I never demanded it. And so that was a really eye-opening book for me. Let me see, The Fallback Girl. But she does a blog, and she also does, I think, some YouTube, and she actually talks about red and pink flags,
Oh, okay.
which is let's see if I can find. So it's called Mr. Unavailable and the Fallback Girl, by
Mm,
Natalie Lue, Lue. It's a great book. It's on Audible. That's how I usually consume my books these days, because I like to do it while I'm driving long distances or while I'm cleaning.
mhm.
It's a lot easier for me to do that than sit down and actually read these days, which is
Impossible. Like our attention spans are so fucked up because of like social media and like all this kind of stuff. And
yeah,
COVID made it much worse. Like my brain doesn't quite function the same way it used to because
yeah,
everything's bite size.
yeah. I've
But
got to think of the last time that I usually I read like on a plane. Like that's when I
mm,
can sit down and
same.
read.
But I'm not
But
flying fucking anywhere right now.
right, exactly. But
You're not going anywhere.
so she also has some YouTube stuff, and she also has some blogs that I found, like talking about red and pink flags, which I found really helpful. So again, her name is Natalie, Natalie, and the last name is Lue, Lue. So anybody that wants to look up those type of things, I think she has some really, really good stuff. Um, but yeah, so there's that. So there's
Yeah.
definitely some
And
lists out
then
there.
there's clearly the smitten kitten.
Yeah, and the Smitten Kitten, which you can look up some of my blogs. I do have one about love bombing on there, and then I actually found, and I can't remember where I got this one. It was probably from one of my books that I read. I need to put a list of books out there that I've read that were really helpful,
Yeah.
but it was like the letter to the next girl, the next victim, basically.
hmm
Because a lot of times when somebody love bombs us and then moves on to the next girl, or maybe even to the person they were with before you, you tend to resent that girl because like, what does she
Hmm.
have that I don't? That like that now he's with her, and like reading that letter to the next one really opened my eyes up to it. It's like I don't hate her, like I feel sorry for her. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And because, yes, right now it's going to be wonderful, but eventually it's going to, you're going to go through what I experienced and then you're going to be that person. You know what I mean? Um,
Yep.
so I have that one on the Smitten Kitten. So it's the Smitten Kitten .wordpress.com right now. I need to, I own the domain. I need to go in and forward it. But yeah, if you go to WordPress, you can look up the Smitten Kitten. Also on Facebook, I share my blog there, which is the Smitten Kitten with Callie D. And I think I have some really good writing actually going on there. So
Have you posted your writing yet?
yeah. So I yeah, on the Smitten Kitten. So the one that you looked over for me,
Mhm.
it actually got shared onto other people's stuff. So
It's
but
so good.
thank you. I needed to write it. So thank you
I
for,
didn't see that it was shared, but I'm really glad that you did.
yeah, I shared it. I have another one that now I'm like second guessing myself. I need to like, I don't know, I need a refresher in writing because it's been so long since I've actually like written
I'll be your
pieces.
editor.
Well, I got another one for you that's just sitting there because I'm like, did I do this one properly? That one went a lot to past and present tense though. So anyway, but yeah, I have another one which basically it talks about how being the cool laid back chick never did me any favors. So that one's gonna be posted, I guess, after you look at it. And so yeah, anyway, and I know you have to leave shortly.
Yes.
Yeah, you're like in 5 minutes.
Yes.
So is there anything that you want to close out with? Possibly. I think we went over some really great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to review it, like, don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself time and space. And it's a shit ton of work if you've got to overcome this stuff, but you absolutely can do it. Don't feel bad about having boundaries or wants or needs. And follow Callie's advice and try to figure out what those pink and red flags are so you can get out of the cycle. And that would be it. And I love you, Callie.
I
I
love you
always
so much.
appreciate
Yes,
these
ma'am.
moments with you. And thank you for letting me join your show.
Of course. Love you too. Bye.
Bye.